Hello. Once more, I am delighted that you are here. Each week we get to celebrate more steps forward to freedom and a few backwards when we try to push too much. Unfortunately, those who truly suffer are the small business folk whose date of opening their restaurant or gym or bar is delayed because a small minority rushes out and parties and ignores the precautions to keep everyone healthy. Families who put their life savings and endless hours of work into their dreams are standing on the brink of disaster. But the inconsiderate care only for their good times. Which more or less brings me back to the thoughts of last week, which generated more comments and discussion than any other. And I agree. I tried to address too much and put too many ideas together. So this week, I'm revisiting one of those ideas. What does the Lord require of each of us? In the Bible, Micah answers that question. God has shown us what is good, and he requires only this of us: to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So, how do we do justly? It's not a term heard very often. It really means that as an individual we act in a fair or morally correct way. Well, isn't that just another way of saying do not sin against another? There's a difference in the way we speak of justice and doing justly. One is what is meted out by others, the courts, and all. That is justice. Doing justly is what you do. Doing justly often calls upon us to display courage, and courage is a virtue that we sorely need in these times. We need those with the courage to stand up against idiots who turn up with their sound systems and cases of beer and take over public spaces and light bonfires and sneer at the very systems set up to protect them and us from COVID. We need those with the courage to go to work each day in dangerous and tiring situations. We need those with the courage to stand up to bosses not providing adequate protective measures, and the courage to challenge the able who choose to stay at home collecting CERB rather than returning to work and doing their bit to get our economy up and working. We need to stand up and speak out, but not sink to the level of those who hit out demeaning others. But most of all, we need to have the courage to stand up for anyone who is targeted and told they don't belong. Targeted for what they are or who they are. Targeted for the color of their skin or the sex of their partner. Too often, sympathy after the fact is offered, a shoulder to cry on or a listener for venting. But what is needed is for people to stick up for them when they're being insulted or embarrassed or made to feel out of place. And the reality is, it only takes one or two voices speaking up to change the dynamics. It does take courage to speak out against injustice. But courage is expected of every Christian in the face of injustice and cruelty. So, now moving along to number 2 of God's expectations of us: loving mercy. Loving mercy is certainly something we want when it comes to us, but when it refers to another, we become a bit more judgmental and wonder whether mercy is really deserved. Which takes us back to, for in the way that you judge, you will be judged, from last week. I recently read that the majority of Canadians support capital punishment, and the majority of those who do believe in it because of the cost of keeping people in prison. Wow, not because of the crime, but because of the cost. I turned against capital punishment when I read the words of the 18th century jurist William Blackstone, who wrote, "Better that 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. And if that one is executed, there's no going back to make amends." Not that I want the other 9 criminals on the street, but of the alternatives, I've chosen my side. An old boyfriend would be amazed at these words. He refused to pay his income taxes, since that was paying the hangman's salary in his mind. Seeing the story in the telly, I wrote indignantly, telling the editor that I would not pay my taxes because that would be paying his salary at the CBC. And that was how our relationship began. So my reading the words of a long-dead jurist persuaded change where ridicule and sarcasm had failed. But mercy is something we can practice daily, and it often just takes the form of not judging others. Remain neutral if you don't know the whole story. Instead of wondering why the mother doesn't deal with her screaming toddler, why not just let her move in front of you in the line? Getting a tired child into a bath and bed is far more important than whatever you're heading for. Try listening to the other side of the story of the angry and the upset. It just takes a few moments and can make a world of difference. And add some conversation to the coins you toss to the panhandler. Doing mercy takes many forms. You can be merciful to those you never know or see, supporting distant charities digging wells or buying products that promote fair wages, or planting a tree on the highway of heroes. But in these times, not everyone has the money to do so. There are simple, practical, no-cost ways you can make your world a bit more merciful through your own actions. Send an email or start a petition to support a cause you cherish or to right a wrong. Send a thoughtful, handwritten letter to the editor or the prime minister or whoever can bring about change, and then splurge and buy a stamp. That will really get their attention. Right at home you can make things better. For example, instead of walking by the mess left by others in the park, while self-righteously condemning their sloth, how about bringing an extra bag on your dog walk? One for the dog's droppings, and one to pick up some of the cans and empty coffee cups and food wrappers. You leave a better place for those coming after you, and you will feel better about you. And that makes it double mercy. And don't look down your nose at the old woman going through the garbage. Instead, set aside your liquor bottles and beer cans until you see her in her cart coming down your street, and then take them out to the curb for her. The few dollars they represent means a lot more to her than you, and saves you that trip to the beer store. And how about spending your time in a merciful fashion, taking some kids to the zoo to give their parents alone time, doing the shopping for a sick neighbor or driving them to a doctor's appointment? Can you share a talent? Teaching someone how to cook or garden or play the piano? God gave each of us gifts. Why not give some back? Loving mercy is just a way of looking at the world. Grateful for the mercy shown to us by God, and grateful for the opportunity to pass it along. And so we move to God's final expectation of us, to walk humbly with your God. Dave Gibbons of Outreach magazine recently wrote about the changes in church that he sees coming, and it sounded like some of them are kind of the things our seeker services and outreach at St. Monica's are trying to do. He wrote, "We have entered a season of renaissance for the church, and it's only now becoming evident to many. History may see this time as a change from building and planting churches as we have known it, to focusing more on building people where they are already divinely planted. This will not just be equipping people to start a prayer group or bring people to our box or our programs. Instead, people will be equipped to honestly and purely love those around them and the vulnerable, loving them and walking with them, and giving them the best resources to achieve God's design for their lives." Well, hopefully over the past months, when we have been distanced from much of the hurly-burly of our lives that normally occupies our days, dashing from one thing to another, socializing, traveling, partying, visiting, going to the workplace and the gym, hopefully we've had time for ourselves. We've had time to think about what is important. We've had time to consider our relationship with God and with others. We've had time to look back at dreams not yet realized. We've had time to ponder things done or things left undone and things yet to be done. We've had time to acknowledge our imperfections and our failings and to regret them. In other words, I hope we have all spent some time getting to know ourselves better. And if that isn't a humbling experience, I don't know what is. Which should leave us prepared to walk humbly with God and with all his people. I close with a prayer from a Lutheran prayer book. God most mighty, God most merciful, you help and save your people. You are the fortress. May there be no more war. You are the harvest. May there be no more hunger. You are the light. May no one die alone or in despair. God most majestic, grant us your gift of the true life, the life that flows from your Son and the Spirit, one God, now and forever. So may it be. Amen.